So let's start maybe back up a little bit. It
Yeah.
sounds like your experience with bowling started even a generation above you with your
Oh,
father.
yeah. Yeah. So my dad, he started I think he started working for Brunswick in 1970. He worked with Brunswick for 28 years. So yeah, that works. He retired in 98. So his center, the first center that I think he was managing was out in Memphis, Tennessee, which is pretty wild in the fact that it was during a time that that he got involved by pot bowling. So he was like, "Hey, the center's done. I don't want to pay for my bowling. Can I work here?" And they're like, "Yeah, that works." So he started out in the industry just as a counter guy,
Yeah.
so he could shut down at night, and then a bunch of people could, yeah, bet on bowling, whatever you want to call it. They would have some skill challenges. Let's go
Mhm.
with that after the center closed
Yeah.
till 6 a.m. And that's kind of how he got his start. And going from there, getting into the management part of the business, getting exposed. Like one of his couple times, he had the King Elvis. It's out in Memphis. They would
Right.
shut down the center. He would come in with all of his buddies and bowl all night long. So that's another fun part of the industry is when you have those kind of unique experiences and surprises that happen.
Right.
But yeah, he worked for Brunswick 28 years. Ended up as the vice president of operations for Brunswick Bowling and Billiards for the Southeast.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere around 40 centers at the time that he was responsible for,
Sure.
making sure that they worked. A number of the folks that have been on your podcast had worked with him in Brunswick. Some worked directly. Bart Berger is a longtime family friend. Dad actually hired him out of college.
Oh, no way.
He's got a whole story
Yeah.
around that too. And but yeah, so and again, he started out simple, just working on the desk, and just through hard work, diligence, and his passion for bowling, getting into the upper management of Brunswick. I had the experience of being the standard bowling center brat, going around trying to get dollars and quarters, play video games, bowl on youth league, all that kind of good
Mhm.
stuff, and then start transitioning again into management and ownership as well when we bought our center up here, and learning with my dad, who is it's always interesting working for family.
Sure.
It's one of those, well, always that situation of I got to understand that.
The two
And
hats.
yeah, like
Mhm.
I always call it, for those multi-gender folks who are looking at, maybe their kids are getting interested in the business as they've opened a new center or have purchased into a center, and the whole family's involved. And one of the biggest challenges that I personally had coming to work for my dad was the transition from my dad, who's always going to love me, always going to support me, and then Dan is all about the business.
Right.
And it's one of those things that you really gotta, if you've got family involved, you really have to work that out,
It's true. Yeah.
because it's
Right up front.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you can have family members get their feelings hurt
Right.
or have difficulty understanding that a reprimand and explanation about bowling doesn't mean your parent is mad at you. It
Right.
means there's a lesson to learn, and you've got to learn it, but you got to be able to find a way
Yeah.
to kind of work through that. And that can always be, some families that can be prickly. I've been, like I said, my dad and I've been pretty blessed that in a lot of ways, like our humor's on the same wavelength. We've talked to each other for a long time. We have a lot of history in scouting. So got to already kind of participate in the learning and mentorship progress
Yeah.
of kind of a work environment where scouting is, you're trying to educate young
Right.
men.
Right.
And so we kind of had that, and it kind of transitions over well to the bowling center pretty well. There's times that Dad and I have some heated discussions,
Of course.
and then there's times that we're pretty copacetic in what we're doing. We've had a wild journey to get to this point too. So again, I mentioned that we bought our center in 2001. 2004, Brunswick came to us with an offer of a couple more centers. We had a bowling center in Greensboro, a bowling center in High Point, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina that they had. And we took them up on that offer. And so we ended up growing to 4 centers. And then about a half a year later,
You went from
uh,
1 to 4 all
yep,
together, or like 1 by 1?
all 1 to 4
Wow.
overnight.
Yeah, that's a
But
shift.
well, see, here's the thing though, is with my dad, his experience was 100% in multi-center management.
Yeah.
again, once he got past the general center manager part and became like a regional and district manager,
Yeah,
and then his ultimate
riding the
retirement.
bike.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100% his wheelhouse of where he operated.
Okay.
So we kind of knew the pitfalls. We knew the importance of keeping an eye on the P&Ls, making sure all your costs are in order, coming up with strategy plans, coming up with timetables for marketing. He had all that. Didn't necessarily call it all of that because, again, we always joke around that, yeah, we're good at redneck math and stuff like that. But again, he had the skills to get it down. And again, he worked with me quite a bit on there. About a half year later, the center in our town, across town, came available at auction. And we thought it was going to be a pretty decent opportunity for us. So we took advantage of that. So it grew to 5 centers. And almost overnight after that happened, there was a center out in Lubbock, Texas, that became available, that they said, hey, are you going to be interested in that? And my dad was like, well, heck yeah, I know that center well. That's a good center. And they're like, well, how are you going to manage it? He goes, like I did for y'all, I'm going to get on a plane and fly. It's just, so again, at our peak, around about the end of 2005, we ended up having 6 bowling centers, kind of under our belt we were managing. And around about 2008, most folks who were in the industry know what happened then.
Yeah.
Also, what they didn't know about us is my dad, he got a divorce that year, just before everything taken a nosedive.
Oh man. Yeah.
So on one hand, it's amazing that we got out of the divorce and we managed to keep the centers from that. That's hard enough to do in the industry. And
of course,
again, it happens.
Right.
But 08 hit, and all of our centers, we could show you the week that gas hit $4 a gallon. Because 08, when gas hit $4 a gallon, that's when it became, do we entertain the family and kids, or do I have enough gas to go to work?
Right.
So that ended up being a tipping point for us. So as I like to say it, we spent the next couple of years consolidating down to some of our best centers. We had some different roadmaps and different ideas. With the blessing of 2020 hindsight, we could see where there were some other options that we could have taken, some different roads we could have done. And we could have got out of it with maybe one other center. But life is life. You do the best thing you can do is make the decisions that you got to make while they happen, and push forward. Yep. Paralysis is, and again, we'll probably get into this later in the questions of the upcoming economy. Paralysis is its own answer,
right?
But usually it ends up being a bad one.
Yeah.
So
one of the worst.
Yeah. So, but we moved forward. We made decisions. We did what we had to do. We consolidated down to Holiday, debt-free at the end of everything.
Wow.
So we got out and we were in a favorable position for our center. But it's not saying it's easy. Not saying it was easy at all. It's a lot of tough times there. And that's kind of how we get to the transition of our center, going from very traditional bowling center, like when we first bought it, league focus, try to get those second shifts of leagues, really pushing for that, to having a league on a Friday and a Saturday night, which right now, oh my gosh, it almost feels like, when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh. But it was, again, different times, different transitions, different expectations. But yeah, I mean, and then from us, that was from 08 to 2013 to get from all the centers and then consolidated
into the one.
Right.
Is that when you started switching to the FEC model, or was that further down the road?
So anything that you're going to do when you come in and make a change to your business ultimately is a culture change. And that's something from us having multiple centers, going in, taking them over from Brunswick. Like I ended up going down and managing the center in Greenville, South Carolina. And going in and really having that experience open my eyes to how much any change, you've got to start with the culture. You got to start with your people. You got to make sure that they're on board with the idea. So I was down there, like I said, I was down there till about 2013. That's why I moved back up to Holiday. That's when we finished that whole process. And the first thing I did when I came in, because I know when people come purchase a center or come in to manage a center, some management, some organization is like, hey, just remove everybody and we're going to go through a rehiring process and all that, which is an option and is a good way if you want to establish a culture from the word go to establish that. Although at the time, and the way that we've kind of gone in and taken over the business is we didn't want to be working 90, 100 plus hours a week on the front desk. It's not a very effective use of our time.
Right.
So we've always gone into the existing culture, gone into where people are, take some time to evaluate what's working, what's not working. When we try to introduce anything new, who jumps on board, who might not be who may not be on the boat with us for a long time. And that's kind of what I did when I moved back to Holiday. Is I spent about the first 6 months really evaluating where we were at. And where we were at the time was we had dollar coupons, dollar games, dollar shoes. And 2008 to 2010, maybe you needed to operate that way just to get people through the door.
Right.
It was a survival stance. By 2013, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
2013, 2014, we were full all the time, but we weren't making a dime.
Right.
We were discounting ourselves to death. And that's kind of where we started. That's kind of where I started when I came back in. Was one, we had so many coupons out. I always said you could sneeze and hit a $1 coupon for Holiday Lanes at the time.
Yeah.
But that's where, again, it's kind of where we started, was evaluating, okay, what is our pricing structure like? It wasn't that great. Of course, naturally, after coming off a number of years of very difficult situations and decisions, the staff morale was pretty low. And that was kind of
consolidation phase, you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because again, Holiday itself has always been the family center.
Like the flagship.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll say it's always been run very family style. Dad's the boss, was the operational manager for him. And Dad just knew everybody, talked to everybody. We never really had a very corporate or structured kind of family here, because Dad was like, hey, I'm going to retire here. Sure, with Brunswick, I was really tough. I got things done. I made sure the management did what it was supposed to do. But in his retirement, he's like, I just want to own the center. I want to come out, hang out every day. I want to have my coffee in the morning, take a nap in the afternoon, come back in. If the numbers are right, hey, we're fine.
Yeah.
And that was, again, it was kind of been run like that. But of course, when it feels like everybody there, Dad's feeling rough, they're feeling rough.
Yeah.
And if you got to come in, if you're going to start making some changes, again, to the operations, the culture, stuff like that, some people are on board and some people are just going to be like, it's always been like this. I don't want to move. And you got decisions to make.
Right. Yeah. I find that a lot of the good operators are that way. Follow the procedure. They follow what's been laid out.
Yeah.
So they can be tough to introduce new ideas to those sites, but they tend to be very reliable and consistent. So it's kind of a balance. Trade-off.
Yeah.
Hey, did you like this video? Great. We make 10 of them a week. Subscribe to learn more and keep learning about what's working in the industry. Talk to you then.